Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am authorized to assure you that so far there is no reasonable cause for alarm. The rumors of invading armies and mass destruction are based on hysteria and are absolutely false. I repeat, these rumors are absolutely false.
Welcome to Thoughtspeak, a podcast dedicated to the discussion of K. Applegate's 1996 book series, Animorphs. I am Coleman.
And I am Mitchell. And this episode of Thoughtspeak is brought to you by our lovely Patreon subscribers. Paying for the show so you don't have to. And we always love to take a moment to thank each and every one of our
patrons?
$5 and up reward tier people. So in no particular order, a very special thank you to Jennifer Baker, James Miola, Graith, Dominic, Aheen, Kendra. These are the names that we've got on our Patreon, so I'm very sorry if they are not exactly who you are, or for any mispronunciations. Do you have the next block, or do I need to keep going?
Keep going.
Great. A very special thank you to Dan Zander, Daniel Martinoli, Nita Labrada Gaffaro, and Michael Blemick. And
no, he actually sent us a correction. I can't believe you missed that one. It's Blumecki. Blumecki.
Are we sure
Blumecki.
now? Blumecki.
Yes, Blumecki.
Okay, at some point we're going to get super good at just nailing these names out. Also, Sorrent Joyce. Thank you very much to all of our Patreon people. If you wish to have your name butchered by us here on the show, you can do so by logging on to our Patreon at patreon.com/thoughtspeak and helping us out. Really, really keeping the show going. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, everything on there goes towards helping us out, deferring the costs of the show, because it does cost money to have your show on the internet. Surprise, surprise. And those are also going to special projects like building a new website for the podcast, a community where people can hang out and talk about Animorphs, a more centralized location for that sort of thing. We also have some special projects that if we get high enough, we're going to see some, high-end Animorphs fan content from us. So, check it on there, see if any of the rewards are to your liking.
Want that.
We have different tiers based on the Yeerk Empire. You can be a Taxon controller, a human controller, possibly even an Andalite controller, although they're pretty legendary.
Hey, and what's really cool is that if you get a high enough tier subscriber, you get invited to a very special post-episode discussion that we do either before or after we record. In the previous discussions case, we actually just had our discussion on the separation right before recording this episode.
Yeah, it literally just ended, and it was a great discussion. It's hilarious where those conversations go. I'd say this one went a little saucy towards the end, but
it sure did, and that's a book I want.
Yep. But yeah, we really enjoyed those chats, and those might change in the future, but they're incredibly enjoyable. So,
see if you can get yourself invited to one.
It's easy.
We take tonight, pretty much anyone.
We're not here to talk about the past. We're here to talk about the future. And by future, I mean a book released nearly 15 years ago.
Of course.
We are talking about Animorphs number 33, The Illusion.
Right. If you read the title of this episode that you clicked on, you'd know that we're talking The Illusion. Let's go covers. What do you think?
This is one of the better ones. I like. Maybe it's just because I like the colors. Maybe that's what I'm reacting to. But I do like the blue and the cool shiny teal. I think it all works pretty well.
They use blue and green for Axe and his covers a lot, I'm noticing. And you know what might make this one a little bit more visually appealing is that there's like a lot going on. The transformation from Hawk to Andalite is especially one of the more cool ones. Really, anything going to Andalite is cool. And then
it's
you got
complicated.
and then you got Ghost Tobias hanging out in the background, all giant-like.
I think the background is Z-Space, and this is the first time we've seen his real body just hanging out in there.
I would like to take a ruler to Tobias's hair part there, because I'm pretty sure it would exceed a foot.
I actually like this the model for Tobias more than the previous one. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, Tobias is one character that they never really nailed down the correct design on. I think the Applegates envisioned a more blondish. You get a really good image of Tobias actually under the cover for the last Megamorphs book. I think the entire cast looks as perfect and as how I imagine them, I guess, and how they're described as well. I really like that image.
Yeah. Also, we can see that the Andalite on the cover, his stock eyes have changed to how we know them. They're a little more flexible looking. They don't look like rigid, weird stalks.
Well, they're not segmented either.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if this is... I think this is still the same stock photo image of Axe.
Yep.
Which kind of irks me. I really wish they'd give us some really cool, original Andalite artwork. But, you move to the inside cover, and it's nothing that exciting. It's, the same pose we've seen of Axe, and then another one of him just kind of standing over there watching himself, who is Tobias, his nephew.
I don't know why they... I don't know if these designers have ever seen an animal too. Like, I don't know why they just got so confused when it comes to like the nose, the eyes, and the tail. The nose just looks like a piece of plastic toy that was cut in half and shoved on the face. The eyes are just awkward. Like, I mean, I know it's a very alien idea, but you couldn't look at it like an insect with stock eyes or something just to get something a little more normal.
Well, and they just don't look very realistic, even for an alien.
Yeah, they look pretty weird. And then the tail is like this weird bubble at the end, and then it's got like a little decoration coming out of the back.
The tail reminds me, honestly, of a rattlesnake tail, like a rattler. That's what it looks like, with a big talon coming off of it, which is kind of weird. Always weird to notice the amount of fingers on Axe's hands.
Yeah, and I still don't like... I've never liked how, in any of the depictions of Andalites... the tail blade is so curved. I mean, you'd think if this was a weapon, like a natural weapon, there wouldn't be, it gets stuck on everything if they tried to use it like that.
Well, it just doesn't look like a blade. It looks like a claw, a talon. And I think that's a major design flaw for the stock image of Andalite that we're given. I think they could have hired a slightly more talented artist to come up with something a little cooler. It's also weird noticing that Axe has like almost kind of whitish, lighter hair on his chest, which is like, I guess, the Andalite version of chest hair. Maybe.
I think it's just his. I think it's like fragments of fur. Like his body underneath is human colored, and so we're seeing his body through the fur. I think that's what they're going for.
Oh, that could be it.
Like his face.
It's not that bad of an inside cover image as far as these things go. It technically is a scene from the book, so well done. Although it's not a very hard scene to replicate.
Yeah, it's a lot of copy and pasting and turning his head a different way.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's your turn to read the back of this book, which is good because my copy is used and highly used, I might say, to the point that there's some markers on the front cover, and even the back. A summary is a little bit obscured by some... Oh, God, I don't even want to think about what that might be.
Kind of Animorphs collector are you? Like I was going through half-price books to find mine as well, but I made sure that I didn't buy a copy unless it was near mint. I've got a pretty good collection.
This could have been one that I received on Amazon.
Like Amazon?
I'm not sure.
Well,
Anyway,
I will read the back
take it
of the
away.
book, even though it sounds like it'd be more fun for you two with the obscured version. But anyway, Tobias, the other Animorphs, and Axe, still non-Animorph, already have a few problems: saving the world, keeping their identity secret, finishing their homework. It just ends right there. It's just the end of a sentence. It's weird. Now they have one more thing to add to the list. The Yeerks have discovered a way to cause a person to demorph. And with this new device, Visor 3 plans on capturing the Andalite bandits. Now what? The Animorphs and Axe realize they have to get rid of the device or be captured by the Yeerks, and the risk of getting caught is very high. That's when Tobias comes up with the only possible plan. Someone has to acquire Axe. Okay, Tobias didn't come up with that plan.
This whole summary is, I want to say, deceiving.
Well, yeah, because the device isn't new. The plan isn't new. Yeah, I think that whole thing is just pretty messed up.
It really only explains the general setup, the premise of the book. And again, I really do think that maybe some of these summaries were written before the book was even finished.
Yeah, like maybe based off their outline or something.
Yeah, exactly. The last one, I think the separation we said felt like that as well. That maybe the summary was written.
Here's a real
about
quick
different
question.
version.
Quick question. So the separation, when they were talking about the anti-morphine ray, maybe I misread, but I thought that the anti-morphine ray not only caused you to demorph, but made it so you couldn't morph anymore.
No, I don't think that was ever mentioned. The only thing that
That's what I
was
thought.
they were extremely vague about it, and just saying that it was a ray that they were working on. Nothing concrete yet. Just they were like running computer tests to see if they could figure out a way to cause somebody to demorph, and that was it. And frankly, we're not really given much more information than that.
But anyway, let's jump right into it.
I'm jumping in, bro.
I like how this one starts. I like this one starts with something we've seen before: the Animorphs at a dance, a school dance.
Oh yeah,
but I think done in kind of a different light. It's from Tobias' perspective, which is cool because last time he was in school outside of that other dance, he didn't fit in. He was the nerd. He got picked on, and now he's expected to go to this extremely social event just because Rachel's bored with their relationship.
Well, and I think the even more interesting comparison is, he's struggling with his inner hawk, and who, of course, hates being confined inside, surrounded by people, unable to fly. It's dark, poor human senses, all that stuff. That's super interesting to me. Really, any outside of missions, social interaction the kids get to have and be kids is just great. This is probably my favorite part of the book, even, is Marco's little interaction, as he's on the dance floor with Rachel and Tobias.
Just living it up. I will say it's disconcerting. I know a big topic with Tobias throughout the books has been him losing himself to the hawk. What I thought was different about this beginning is him accepting it on the human side. Like he wants to get out of there. He feels like it's a betrayal for Rachel to suggest he stay in Morph, even suggest it or be a part, let alone be a part of a plan to trap him in Morph. Just how badly he wants to get back and is worried about morphing back outside the time limit. It's just crazy to look at that from the perspective that he's trying to get back to Hawk. That really adds a layer to that time limit and makes it a part of his arc and his character that he's dying to get back and not be trapped in human Morph.
Yeah, and that this whole book really makes me like Tobias more, as I assume it does for most fans. And where it does a good job is, like you said, having him stuck in these moments where, he wants to get back to being a hawk because he doesn't want to be useless. That's his whole character arc, is that from the first book on, he was useless, he felt, to the team stuck in hawk morph, because he couldn't morph. He couldn't go on aquatic missions. He couldn't do stuff that the other teammates could do. And when he got the morphing power back, it was so important to him that he finally felt like he was back on the team and back in the fight, and he was useful, and everybody appreciated that. So if he were to ever lose that again, there's no doubt in his mind that he would go back to being useless to Jake again, and he definitely does not want to be useless to Jake and the fight.
But I disagree. I mean, he does have that moment with Jake where he kind of shoots him a glance, and after this, you hear Jake talking about him saying he's indispensable. But I thought it was very different in the sense that he didn't even bring up the fact that he didn't want to be worthless to the Animorphs. He was talking like he was so comfortable being a hawk. The idea of even being a human again just seemed like he didn't want that. He didn't want to be a human who could morph again. He's lived his life as a hawk. He's used to it now. That's what he wants.
Yeah, and
it's crazy.
I felt like this book did a really good job in driving home the point that Tobias has nothing to go back to for being a human. We got to see flashbacks of his life. There's nothing good there for him. And
we'll get to that.
He at first, he thought the being stuck as a hawk thing was a curse, but I believe over the course of the series, we've seen him change his mind on that and feel like it's more of a blessing, and that what really happened was he's gained his freedom. And with his morphing ability back, he now has not only his freedom, but he's involved in the fight. He's doing something important with his life still. So that's why, he loses his morphing ability, and again, I think he just feels like he's going to be a useless hawk, or he's going to be a useless human. Overall, he's just not going to be all that he could be in Jake's army.
So we see him at the dance. We see Marco fooling around. We get this scene of him so terrified of being stuck in human morph. He's running away, not knowing if Rachel is trying to trick him. I don't think she was.
Yeah, and how not cool of Rachel. No, I think it's flat out implied by her when she says, "Can't you just stay?" Like, she meant stay as a human.
I think she meant stay for like just one more minute. You have 8 minutes, just stay for 1 minute. This isn't a scary scenario. I think she is less caring about him being trapped in human morph than he is. And I don't think that's the same as actively trying to get him stuck. Because that'd be a big betrayal.
It came off very different to me. To me, it seemed like she was almost maliciously trying to trap him as a human.
No, because that would be a total betrayal to him. I don't think she would do that. But anyway,
no. I will say though, okay, because it turns into this whole thing where he's like, "Oh, I'm out of time. I'm running out of time," so he has to run out of the school. And there's some things that get him caught up, like some barriers, and there's Chapman for a sec. And like teachers are chasing him, but Rachel does redeem herself a little bit by helping him to escape, and then he of course demorphs and makes it back to hawk mode. It's kind of cool that there's like one teacher that remembered him and was like still cool to him.
Because he was probably a good student, and
it was a neat little touch
got along with the teachers. And I like how when he gets outside, there's like a, I don't know, very laid back Jake.
I would not say laid back. This is I think some of the best interactions, some of the best that Animorphs has to offer in terms of these characters. Really, really evolving, because Jake is now very much like the tired, worn out old man, and it's really hitting him hard. He's just sitting outside, having a moment to himself finally, and Tobias catches him there, and I dig that some girls walk by and they're like, "Oh, hey, Jake," and he's like, he can't even recall who they are. He doesn't know them. And
that was a great touch. That was one of those moments that really make the series and show what this war is doing to these kids, and it wasn't even written by Applegate.
Sure,
forgetting his classmate's name and talking about taking 20-minute naps throughout the day.
Oh, yeah. I loved this little development on Jake's part where, Tobias kind of figures out that he's been studying old war generals and
Oh yeah.
He's actively like doing what he should have been doing this whole time, and trying to learn and study and just become the best leader that he can be. And boy, does he need it now, of all times.
And I think that's because they're in the reality of it. I mean, you see the beginning, they're totally just kids dealing with situations, failing and losing over and over again. Then they start to get a little better. Then they start to get a little more organized. And they're doing well, they're doing better, they're winning more missions, they're actually completing campaigns. Then they hit some shit, and some really bad things happen. And I think now they're in a phase where they're experienced enough to know they're at war, they're experienced enough to know what war really is, and almost out of desperation now, Jake is coming to grips with, yeah, I'm the leader. Why would I not go back through history and look at what other leaders have done and try to learn from that? But it's an act of desperation, not necessarily like him getting smart all of a sudden.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
he wants to
it's
win
hardly
this
training
war.
By any means.
Yeah, he wants to win the war because it means they all get to live.
It's pretty important.
Yeah. So just great moments at this dance. I agree. There's good stuff all around here.
But however, this is where Jake is, to me, very stressed out because he is very unclear in his mind. When Tobias asks him like when they want to meet next, he tells him one thing, and then he kind of, no, wait a minute, no, we can't do that. We got to do this, and he lets drop that there's something going on with the anti-morph ray again, and
yeah, Eric stopped by to smoke a cigarette and tell him.
Yeah. Eric was caught smoking a cigarette by Chapman earlier in the book as Tobias was fleeing. Mentioned that something's going on there.
I think that was a smart way to have Eric be there and it be like almost a distraction. I love the little interaction there with Chapman and Eric, and Tobias looks at it as just two people faking a real life interaction, going through the paces because they're both hiding, very deep secrets. That's a great observation.
That's awesome. Like when they make two chat bots talk to each other, and they just get like into these weird conversations of nonsense.
Oh yeah, but
little
moving
more
on from the incredibly
that.
good dance scene.
Oh yeah, because they meet up again later at Cassie's barn, or the next time that they do that. Everyone's just like hanging out, chilling, like normal, like almost kind of lighthearted, and then Jake busts in with Eric at his heels, which is like a new thing to ever happen.
Yeah, them being off on their own, discussing things, and almost coming in there with a plan. I mean, that's some scary developments. I mean, we just joked about that being new, but that's like Jake and Eric are like the generals. Or like a spy and his general, and then the Animorphs, the foot soldiers. Because we even see in this scene Jake holding information, retaining it until the moment he needs to, manipulating them to have acts. I mean, this is a Jake we have not seen before. Easily.
No, he is definitely planning like several steps ahead now, and yeah.
No, you know what this is?
What?
This is the Jake that the books have been saying we've had, but actually his actions resolving that. Like they keep saying that he seems older and wiser. They keep saying that he's become more like he's this kid, but he seems more of a military leader. But we've seen the same Jake over and over again, making decisions and taking charge of that. But I don't think we've seen him like this, which is how the book has been describing him. But this book actually shows him. That's the difference. I think this is going to be a little spoiler for how I feel about this book, but I feel like it took an outside perspective to finally start to reveal these characters and how they'll be in the end of the series. It's really a big step forward, I think, this book.
Yeah. No, I think it's excellent. It does wonderful things for both Jake and Tobias's developments.
And Rachel. Rachel's a huge development in this book. Huge.
Oh, sure. Sure. Yeah, that comes later.
Kind of. It's already been started, I think. But I'll get into that later.
Well, the whole point of this meeting is that the anti-morph ray is ready to go, apparently, and they're looking for Andalite bandits to test it on. And so the discussion turns to quickly like, well, we got to destroy the ray. But Jake quickly posits that, or maybe we should let them capture one of us. And he's very quick to be like, take me for instance. I could get captured, and then they could do all this, and then, which of course sets Marco off on this like, boom, you're not gonna sacrifice yourself for the team, and blah blah blah, and he lays out how crazy it is.
Marco's actually behind on this plan. Like he's not catching what the real plan is immediately. And then of course, I'm sure they expected this. Rachel then volunteers next, saying that Jake is too important. Rachel's the gung-ho one. Then you have Tobias debating it in his head, and then Axe is the first to see.
Well, yeah, Axe is the logical volunteer, and he does so, and most of the team, I think, is in agreement that Axe should just do it, because it makes sense. I mean, if they're going to demorph something, you would want them to end up with an Andalite and not a human. However, as Tobias is quick to figure out, then they'd know that the ray would work, is the thing. And they don't want them to know that it works if it does work.
Yeah, and the great thing about this scene is you have Tobias looking at Jake and Eric and realizing with his keen vision, his keen bird vision, that Jake and Eric aren't as happy as everyone else with Axe volunteering. Like, something's missing. Like, he's waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that's when Tobias is like, oh, okay, here's what the real plan is. And it's Tobias realizing it, Jake affirming it, and then just a second later, Marco getting it. Like, I like that progression. That shows where everybody's at. That shows how they think. Just a really good moment.
Yeah, the interactions between all the team members, especially in this and then like on the mission a little bit later, are really good for this book. So Eric kind of briefs him on like what's going to happen with this awards ceremony. The sharing is running this like dedication for a community center that they're opening. And there's a really funny bit in the book that actually made me laugh out loud, which I'm going to read to you, where Eric is talking, and he's telling him about this plan. And he says, "There's something else you need to know," Eric added. "We do not think the Yeerks built this community center out of concern for the community." "I'm shocked," Marco said, then laughed.
Yeah.
This is a great... There's still really good comedy, as well as, the high-tension drama, which is what these books do really well, is juggle those two things.
For not being a Marco book, this book showcases Marco as if it were a Marco book. You get a lot of funny lines from him.
Well, he's just doing a lot of goofy crap in this book, especially on this stupid mission. I had always imagined, and I thought I'd heard whispers from the community, although I can't blame the community on this thought of mine. I had heard that Axe was not going to be willing... to give up his DNA, so to speak, to let Tobias morph into him.
Yeah, I thought.
So I was. Yeah, were you as shocked as I was when
I didn't know where I read it, but I had read that the big plot of this book was Axe being just a stick in the mud about somebody else morphing Andalite, and that's like the big pull, like the big problem in this book is Axe refusing and being mad about it, and that his Shorm would even ask it of him. That wasn't even part of this book at all.
Well, I don't know. Either we were misled, or for some reason our imaginations ran rampant with just a little bit of bad info. But Axe actually is the one to suggest Tobias acquire him and morph him.
And he's excited by it. He's incredible.
Oh, yeah. He's like super into it. And, I admit it'd be pretty awesome to see somebody turn into your double and go cause some mayhem or something.
It's not just somebody. It's his. He doesn't have any other Andalites. That's
this is like his real family.
It's like his real brother. His real brother getting to be an Andalite with him.
Yeah, exactly. This is something that I swear they are doing every single night between books that we're not getting to read. I want that book. Just Axe.
I want that
and Tobias
series.
Chilling out in the forest. Maybe sometimes Axe morphs Red-tailed Hawk and they go off and do hawk things. Who knows? Maybe they spend most of their time doing Andalite things. Maybe they invented a really cool children's card game that they play on Andalite motorcycles.
I'm excited for the listeners who will get that reference.
Well, either way, this was a pretty cool little chapter of Axe willingly allowing Tobias to acquire him, and then morph him, and then they do some Andalite things for a little bit, like Tobias tries some advanced tail combat maneuvers and awkwardly gets his tail blade lodged in a tree trunk, and they do some Andalite ceremony, praying to Mecca kind of stuff, and it's a good little chapter.
Oh, and it's a great moment, too, where Tobias is like, he tries his first ritual as an Andalite, and he's like, I like that, and acts like, I like that, too. Like, that's a sweet moment. Like, that's great. And I think this scene really shows the structure of this book and how well it's structured versus a lot of the other Animorphs books, where you have this scene of really personal stuff happening mixed in with the scenes that's progressing the plot. So you have these side scenes, and it's great because any other Animorphs book, not Andalite book, any other Animorphs book, they would hear about the mission, and then the next scene is them setting up for it, or worried about it the next day at school, or talking about it again, or something like that, or starting the mission. That's always the next scene. This one, it takes a moment to have Axe and Tobias share this, like, not worried about the mission, just, like, really excited to try this new thing. That sounds like a totally different fan fiction that I don't want to go into, but
no, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Tobias is definitely happy to finally get some of that Andalite DNA in him.
Mm-hmm. No, you're back to that other fan fiction. I'm talking about this rich brotherly love that they share.
Okay, and you know what? Before we transition into the next scene, I'd just like to point out that it feels like a very long time since we've had a book where they had to acquire a new morph for a specific mission or purpose, and have like one of those fun chapter or twos where they're like interacting with trying to acquire an animal, a dangerous animal.
And this one's great because we get a little history of the Andalites. And this book weaves in historical and mythological views of the Andalites throughout various scenes. And this is a great one because we learn that it's almost like a Buddhist monk trying to meditate his way into another state of living. You have these Andalites, philosophers or monks or whatever you want to call them, who are always trying to get back to their original instincts, because the instincts of the Andalites are one of optimism and hope and peace. And Tobias gets that just from, I don't know, it's the first time in the series we've seen morphing a sentient creature have positive results. You don't have Cassie over his shoulder worrying about the Andalite mind that's going to pop up. You have him morphing a creature that, yes, it's incredibly smart, but morphing it at its basic instinct level is actually adding something to his reality, and it's incredibly interesting.
Yeah,
I think
deep. That's one of the most interesting things this book posits, is that there might actually be some benefit to morphing a sentient creature and having this balance of like two different minds.
I'm going to say that's a concept. I'm just going to say, as a concept, that's one of the most interesting and thoughtful things that has been in this entire series so far. I mean, it was a big deal, me reading the Andalite stuff in this one. I've never read this book before, and this book was like being slapped in the face. This
changes everything
book.
You knew about morphing sentient creatures. It's only unfortunate that I don't think Tobias morphs Axe enough in the series, and I think everybody should acquire Axe at some point, which I'm not 100% clear on if it ever happens or not. I don't think it does, though.
I think Axe would maybe even have an issue with someone else morphing him, but Tobias is Shorm. I mean, that's it's something he got excited about.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so let's dive into this next big mission scene, because they do get to have a team mission before all the fun and Tobias torture starts. where they're heading to the Sharings' grand opening of this community center that they're building. They're giving out awards. Jake is going to be there in person, just attending with his family, because, of course, Tom is getting an award because he's, hot shit within the Sharings' inner circle.
Says he's rising through the ranks.
Yeah. And we've got... I'm assuming that he's not going to rise quite as fast because of the drama that went down 2 books ago, right?
He did seem a little more of a liability.
They definitely threw some resources at him in that book, and they're probably not all that happy that in the end it was like, well, now we got a hospital bill.
Well, maybe during the separation he did some really good stuff, and that's why he's getting an award.
He took a break. They made him mop the floors and clean the toilets at the Sharing HQ.
And he did a really good job,
It's possible.
But yeah, this whole mission
rest of the team is there too.
And this whole mission's kind of a cluster mess up because it's like they trusted Axe to be kind of the point man on this thing.
I know. Well, it's an interesting juxtaposition to the rest of the book because it's like they really needed to pile on the humor and the laughs and just the wackiness in this end of the book, the whole Act 1, Act 2 kind of part, because from here on out, or after the mission, the book takes an incredibly dark and depressing turn. So, of course, we've got, the team in Flymorph. Like you said, Axe is in human mode for some dumb reason with nobody watching him. And he's running around causing chaos, eating things. The rest of the team are flies, of all things. And yeah, it's extra wacky with Marco being a fly and getting stuck in some chocolate fondue. And then, there's a whole situation where Axe almost eats him because he's trying to rescue him from the chocolate.
I like how that is handled though, because it's goofy, but it's like the back and forth of Marco being like, "No, seriously, don't eat me, bro." Like it was handled kind of seriously, even though it's like a goofy in nature scene.
Well, the thing that made it really work is that the whole time Jake is sitting there trying to act like a normal kid, and he is just freaking out because he can hear his whole team's thought speak going crazy.
And I don't know. I don't know what kind of child you were, but I was a problem child, especially in church. Like, I would not sit still. I would, like, crawl under pews and, like, hit people in the back with back scratchers and stuff. Like, I was a really problem child. So, like, Jake sitting there hearing about the disaster that's happening just reminded me so much of my parents. Like, just, they can't do anything in the middle of an event, like church or something, but their kid is going crazy.
Yeah, basically. And he just really can't intervene. And, He's almost losing. I like this because it's like he's losing his temper with his team now. Like he's playing the supervising father role. Almost.
Well, he's right to. I think Jake has hit. Especially in this book, he's hit another level, and they're all acting like a bunch of kids. And Axe is supposed to be the warrior. He's supposed to be the one that has training against this thing, and he can't control his morph.
I think you're onto something here, buddy, because I think it shows that Jake is evolving ahead of his team, while the rest of the team is still trying to retain this this innocent sort of like, yeah, we're going on missions to save the world, but we're still kids, we're still PG-13 here, and. Jake,
well, yeah, Cassie and Marco only get serious whenever Jake's about to die, and Rachel we're seeing is specifically trying to keep her innocence. That's the big thing I wanted to talk about with Rachel in this book. Is we've gotten the constant hit over the head storyline of Rachel losing control, being too violent, losing who she is, and we're sick of that at this point. I mean, it's a big part of her arc, but honestly, we hear it every other book. And this time,
they finally made a terrific way for her to emote about that really works.
She tries to do normal things. She wants to have a normal date with her boyfriend, and we're seeing her fight back against what war does to an already violent person. And that's the most interesting thing to happen to Rachel in like 30 books.
Well, yeah, exactly. She just doesn't want to lose the girl that she is or could be to the warrior that she knows she has to be. Boom.
This
Boom.
Tobias
Sums up Rachel
book,
perfectly.
You summed it up perfectly. But this Tobias book is the best Rachel book and the best Jake book we've probably had so far.
Yeah, exactly. And, I really like looking at the other characters through different characters' eyes. In particular, after this book, I think it'll be really interesting to see how the team views Tobias after what happens here. But yeah, they're on this mission, and when Jake has a moment where he's got a little run-in with Visor 3, who arrives in human morph, of course.
Great moment.
Yeah, and they even have a little stare down where, the Visor's trying to swat at flies and Jake is actively stopping him from it, and it's just a cool little nugget of a showdown.
And Visor 3 apologizing, saying, sorry if I scared you, and Jake just looks him straight in the eyes and says,
I don't scare easily.
I don't scare easily.
Yeah, and hearing that from Cassie, is Cassie's the one who told Tobias, I saw Jake saying do this. That's just a nice little touch. It's cool.
You can imagine that Cassie just swooned in that moment for Jake. That was probably a very attractive thing. But yeah, so they have that great scene with Visor 3 and Jake meeting. It could have only been better if it was like he just had to shake his hand or something and was just barely containing himself. That would have been crazy too.
It would be awesome if in shaking his hand he could have still acquired him. And I'm pretty sure they say at some point that you can't acquire another animal from somebody who's in morph, but they don't necessarily say you can't acquire the thing's base DNA while it's in morph.
Well, maybe he could have not acquired him, but put him in that trance and made him look like a fool. Maybe he tripped and fell after that or something because he was shaky after being quote unquote acquired. That would have been a cool little scene too. But
maybe, or maybe they should have planned it out to have Jake shake his hand somewhere and put him in the little trance, and then have somebody like Harvey Lee Oswald him from a high rise somewhere while he's immobilized.
No, I mean, what would have been great, and it wouldn't have happened in this book, but if we were a little closer to the end of the series and they knew that their secret was about to get out, but Visitor 3 hadn't been informed yet, and Jake's just staring him right in the eyes, and he's just like, screw you, buddy, or something like that, or punched him out, and then just ran for all the hills.
Get off my plane! And then he punches him off my planet.
Anyway, but they go into the mission.
We forgot to mention about this mission, by the way, is that Eric has also discovered that this community center is also serving as the entrance to a larger extension of the Yerk pool, which is cool. It's good to know that they're still expanding the old Yerk empire. When later when we go down there. They say that there's alien ships down there now. They've actually got transports, which I don't think we've ever heard that before. And it'd be really interesting to see where they're sneaking those things in and out of. Because this entrance to the Yerk pool, as it turns out, is located on the playground of this community center, specifically within the tube that connects two of the jungle gym things. And there's a whole scene where Tobias and Axe they get serious and they infiltrate the community center and they spy on some security guards and stuff. It's all pretty boring. And they just discover the entrance of the Yerk pool from that.
Yeah, but it's that's the kind of scene that's just moving the plot along, where it's they're in morph, Axe takes out one of the guards, and they see that the entrance specifically is also a way to trap them.
They have all security cameras trained on the entrance to the Yerk pool, and they're very much expecting the Andalite bandits to show up to try and infiltrate or something. And Tobias, and what's great about this is that Tobias knows he's going into a trap. He knows he's surrendering it. That's how he thinks of it, as surrendering, because that's essentially what he's doing.
Well, he's definitely doing it because if you think about it, even though they're prepared to walk into a trap, none of them have done this before. None of them have willfully gone with the Yerks and been put in a situation where they could disappear fast without the other Animorphs being able to get to them. And that's exactly what happens here.
Or just flat out be murdered. I mean,
yeah,
there's no reason why one of the higher up Yerk controllers wouldn't just be like, you know what, before the Sandalite Bandit figures out a way out of this, I'm just going to kill him, and then I'll tell the visitor whatever, he was killed, in some accident.
That would have been the smart thing to do, too.
But the thing is, they really drive home that every controller seems to have an innate fear of the Visor and will not do anything to question him or go against him or even really help him. We've seen controllers, I think, even shy away from, like, interfering to kind of do something in the favor of, helping the Visor.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's especially great in the scene where every single person, once they get down into it's like a sub room or an offshoot room of the Yerk pool, wherever they are, every single person is just, everything they're doing is based on their fear of Visor 3 coming back and being angry at them.
Yeah, old Visor 3 runs a tight ship. So, they've located the entrance to the Yerk pool. They know it's time for Tobias to go. Axe kind of like leaps out and reveals himself all dramatically, and Axe is the bait. And then Tobias just, frankly, he just flies right into the tube, the entrance. And Rachel's there as well. She goes with him. She's hiding out in flea morph on him. And this is where the fun begins.
And immediately they're just seeing a wall of Hork-Bajir, just quite a few. And what they're not expecting is this human girl who they say looks like a teenage supermodel or something. Like she reminds Tobias of Rachel a lot.
Yeah, he almost mistakes her for Rachel. Which
and
I thought was odd. So she's just another blonde hottie.
I felt like her introduction, and I know she shows up just from our chat with our listeners. I know she shows up in a later book that I also haven't read, but it's interesting how she's introduced. Feels like they're introducing an important character. It's not like the random human controllers who've just walked up before. This feels like the introduction of a character who has something going on, and I thought that was nice to read in a ghostwritten book in the middle of the series when it didn't feel like anyone was adding anything new to the mythology.
Yeah, well, this is a character that we get a little, quite a bit of backstory on, actually, as it would be. But like you said, it's a heck of a lot of Hork-Bajir. Chapman is there, and this girl, Taylor, is Sub-Visor 51, and she is very special because she's a volunteer controller. Ooh.
And we get more of her backstory later.
Yeah, and before Tobias can, demorph, so to speak, to Andalite, he's hit with, this paralyzing foam stuff that she shoots out of her hand like an android or something. And she just doesn't even care. She nails, all of her team almost with it, too. And she's like, oh, did I forget to tell you to take the antidote?
She's
I don't know. It just seemed like they went out of their way to make her seem like a dick there.
She seems especially evil, and we learn later on that she's got issues.
Yeah, it's all justified, her evil actions, because she's got issues.
I mean, the way they go into it is more character development than they've gone into with a lot of these controllers.
Right? Yeah, a lot of... Yeah, okay. I was sarcastic, by the way.
I can't even tell anymore.
So Tobias and Rachel are they're paralyzed. They're kind of trapped in between morph. If Rachel's even got to the stage of demorphing, but they're separated, and Tobias is very worried that she could be stuck as a flea forever, which would be awful. And he finds himself confined to. They don't go into great description about their container, other than it's clear glass. Again, good job, guys. You figured that one out. It's not very big. He's kind of just stuck in there, and he's trapped in mid-morph still, and they're waiting for Visor 3 to show up. And he finally arrives on the scene with some scientists, some human scientists that are working on the morph ray. And I don't know, this whole morph ray thing, I feel blew over really quickly and conveniently. right?
Well, I
which
think
was their intention, but it also
I think they
seemed
took
like,
it. I think they took it from another book. They took it from the separation, and it wasn't that great of an idea from the separation, but it wasn't resolved either. So I think one of the mandates for this book was probably to include it, but they struggled to.
You know what would have been better?
And so
what would have been better than a demorph ray, a morph randomizer ray. So like, if they hit you with it, you just like suddenly changed from maybe a grizzly bear to let's say a tabby cat. It's a cat ray. Visor 3 can turn everyone into cats. New idea. There it is. I knew it'd come to me. Hashtag I want that book.
Hashtag feline demorphing ray.
the feline ray. The anti everything that's not cat ray. The Visor's favorite new weapon.
Oh, that's interesting.
So this is where the series gets
I think
incredibly
as far as
dark.
a plot device, they wanted to bring back and use, I think they definitely did the most interesting thing with it that they could.
Did you? Because honestly, I really kind of wanted to see like the Animorphs running a mission, and then the Yeerks just kind of like show up on scene and blast one of them with it, and they suddenly like demorph to human, but are they conveniently like fall onto a passing truck or something, and the Yeerks don't get to see that they're human, but they realize that they have an anti-morph ray. And maybe another scene where they're avoiding it during a fight or something. I think that'd have been cool.
I would have liked to see
this is a quick
what
wrap up.
I originally thought it was, which was a morphing ray that stopped you from being able to morph anymore. I think that would have been really interesting.
Oh, you mean like it bricks your body?
Yeah, if one of them actually lost their morphing ability, how incredibly that'd be like a character dying, basically. That'd be an incredibly interesting book.
It would be, yeah. It would be kind of cool if they just had an Animorph that they drop partway through the series.
Yeah.
Cassie. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it would be more interesting if it was someone like Rachel, who that's what she lives for nowadays.
Oh my God, she would, yeah. And then like 5 books later, you just see her in the background going insane, like beating up a competing gymnast or somebody.
Yeah, or like joining the army.
Oh yeah. I would like to think that Rachel, even without morphing power, would still be involved in some way, helping the Animorphs.
Well, she'd be
even
like
if she ended up, she'd go like all hit girl, like she'd throw on a mask and go vigilante hero on the Yeerks.
No, see, I was picturing more like the Oracle from Batman, like Barbara Gordon, who was Batgirl. She gets shot by the Joker and paralyzed in a wheelchair.
Yeah, so she just kind of feeds Batman info.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it'd be way more interesting to see Rachel riding Jake in Tiger Morph into battle like He-Man style with a big sword. I'm coming for you, Visor! That's what she sounds like.
Nice.
Well, anyway, when the anti-morph ray doesn't work on Tobias, doesn't yield any sort of results, even though the scientists are like, no, it must work, it has to work, there's some reason why it's not working, Visor 3 is still like, feed him to the Texans.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, he
Thus
I like that Visor
that
3.
plot line.
I like that Visor 3 in this book is very in and out. He's not like doing his cameo bit he's done from the last few books.
He even seems like he's beginning to show some wear and tear and some tire. Because, yeah, he's like, he expressly states, like, sorry I got held up, I was doing this other thing. And, like, he's making excuses now for why he's late. He doesn't seem like his old, energetic, confident self,
Yeah.
Even killing people, he takes no joy in that anymore. He doesn't simply decapitate. Where's the fun in that? He just feeds him to the Texans now, lazily.
I just see him sitting in therapy or going home to Mrs. Visor 3 and her just being like, man, I miss the old you, the you that would morph some crazy Saturn monster and really enjoy every bite of that, Hork-Bajir who defied you.
That would be awesome. Hey, I'm going to drop a cool reference here. I will say that Visor 3 is like Aku in the new season of Samurai Jack. He's become like chronically depressed that nothing he's doing is working anymore.
You're going to embarrass me in front of our listeners, where I have to admit that I have not watched an episode of the exceptional new series of
that is my goal, friend, to get you and as many people as possible to watch the new season of Samurai Jack, because it is amazeballs.
Yeah,
like,
well,
seriously,
I will catch up. I love this. I love the old series. I love everything else that writer has done. He's incredible. He's got a very hard to pronounce name.
Our next podcast is going to be dedicated solely to Genndy Tartakovsky.
I don't even mind that. Oh my gosh, just us having to sit down and talk about his Clone Wars series.
I could, honest to God, I could watch and review every episode of Dexter's Lab. That show was my childhood. I think probably around the same time I was reading this book series, honestly. Anyway, speaking of this book series, we got Tobias locked in a cage. He's about to go through some torture. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
what do you think about torture, Coleman?
In the real world, I'm against it. In the book series, incredibly interesting.
As it relates to the Animorphs, please.
Yeah, as it relates to the Animorphs, all for it. All for it. Develops character, gives us interesting flashbacks.
Okay. We were talking about how Visitor 3 is like all depressed and stuff. So as soon as he kills the scientists and thinks the anti-morph rays kaput, he like just pieces out and he's like, okay, whatever, the thing's yours. Get him to demorph.
And he just leaves. Specifically, I mean, Taylor is feeling the hurt from this. She thinks that, she's failed him in his eyes now, and she's either just going to look bad in front of him, or she's going to be dead after she doesn't get anything else from him. So,
for her, it is all about getting the Andaloid Bandit to demorph and to further the Yeerk's goal to infest more Andalites. And she ain't going to get that result, as we all know. So yeah, she's just going to torture Tobias a lot, and that's what she proceeds to do from here on. I don't know, 7 or 8 chapters, something like that. She's got the pain machine hooked up to him and hits him with it constantly. And like you said, we get it gets us all sorts of things. It gives us flashbacks. It gives us long, rambling, sometimes incoherent, just nonsense babble.
Well, it's great because it's like he's dreaming half the time, and then the other half of the time, when he's near death, we get these amazing memories of Elfangor. It's almost like jumping right back in the Andalite Chronicles, and getting these perspectives of Elfangor at different times.
There's a couple. They're pretty short.
They're enjoyable though, and incredibly well written.
To me, it seemed like they came out of nowhere, and they aren't explained until the very end.
In an awesome way. I feel like you're not hyping these up enough because they're great, and they reveal more about animals.
We get to it. We also get flashbacks of Tobias's adoptive uncle just kind of being a shit overall, not taking Tobias to the art exhibit that he's a part of or that he won an award for. He's just like a stereotypically bad uncle, Like, what should I care?
Worse than that.
How does that affect me?
Is it going to make us any money?
They're always concerned about money. Whenever they want to portray like a family member as like, bad, it's all about money, people. Money tears you apart.
Follow the money.
But the whole book for the next couple chapters really transitions between the ways that Tobias kind of just gives his human side up to his hawk side because that's more equipped to dealing with this sort of torture, and the ways that he distracts himself and what he thinks about and what he remembers. So we get to see a lot of cool flashbacks of, just his life, what it was like when he was human. And like I said earlier, this is the reason why he really is justified in believing that he's got nothing to go back to as a human, because he's constantly bullied. He's got just a terrible living situation with family members that don't really get him, don't care about him. And we see more of this as he's trying desperately to just stay alive and not be tortured to death. It goes on for quite a while.
It does, and each one, I think, reveals different things. I don't think it's repetitive at all. I think it really shows some depths of Tobias. And I love the using the morph to get away from the torture. I thought that was genius. And then Taylor figuring that out and using pleasure to bring his sentient self back out. I mean, this whole torture scene is about Tobias and the weird creature he is. Like, it's catered to specifically how strange of a creature he is. And it's extremely well written.
What gets cooler as it goes on is the revelation that Taylor is very much the same as Tobias in that she is this flawed creature that is totally caught between two different things. Her Yeerk alliances and, being this Earth girl Taylor. You can see the Yeerk bleeding into thinking, that she really is the human girl, and I think a little bit of vice versa. So it's really kind of interesting to see, somebody being tortured by a very likened character. And, finally, he's able to distract her even a little bit with some banter. And then we get her whole backstory she delivers via monologue. My favorite, when a villain believes themselves to be just about to win so that they reveal everything. Well, this is more of a breakdown, really. As Tobias points out, I think she is literally going insane. And with the amount of pressure she's probably under with Visitor 3 on his way back, yeah, it makes sense that she'd be going a little crazy here.
Well, I don't even think that she's going insane here. I think her character herself, because of, I think this really reveals that the Yeerks are not a symbiotic relationship most of the time. They are meant to be predator and prey. So this broken human volunteering to be a host, I think this shows how messed up it can make the Yeerk itself, to where they start blending with the host. They're supposed to be at opposite ends, the Yeerk controlling and putting pressure down. They're not supposed to be working together. And so, specifically in this girl's instance, it's really driving the Yeerk crazy too. And
I totally get you. This really harkens back to The Separation and how it's all about two sides conflicting, having to work together. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm going to say about every book from now on, by the way. Really harkens back to The Separation.
We should only reference The Separation. But no, I thought this was incredibly interesting. Extremely well done. Tailor-made, pun intended, for a Tobias book. And to show his weaknesses and his strengths.
Right.
They couldn't think of a better way this book could be written.
Well, it's definitely... They needed to have this character introduced to do this thing, because it really wouldn't have worked if it was like Visor 3 torturing Tobias or something, Yeah, there wouldn't have been... We know Visor 3, we already think of him a certain way. It wouldn't have been as good. You know what? I would love a book from Visor 3's perspective. I think we've said that numerous times in episodes all over, but it goes without saying... a Visor 3 Chronicles or something would
I don't know.
Just excellent.
I don't think he deserves it. I think he's one of those people who does a good enough job that he's a blunt force. So someone like that can easily go up the ranks of something like the Yeerk Empire. But as far as like his inner perspectives, I think he's all surface level. He wears his blood-soaked heart in his sleeve. Like
No, dude, you get where it would really help is filling in his actual personality. I would like to see his own book not even be about anything specific. It's just about him like walking around during the day-to-day Yeerk operations and just like his inner monologues, what he thinks about all the peons around him and stuff. I think could be really funny, as well as very character building for him. I think that they want him to be this vague, villainy, not extremely fleshed out force of evil, is my guess. But something like that could make him way more likable.
See, I think he's more of like the supervillain who's like, if you were into his head what he was thinking, he's probably like walking down the some corridor in the Blade ship, and he sees some Hork-Bajir walk by, and he's like, be really cool to see his blood on the wall right now. Like that's as deep as he gets.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, I could chop that guy's head off right now. Nobody'd say a thing.
Be pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they could do a lot there, I think, anyway. Where are we at in this?
Who asked what you think?
I don't know, some people with their monies. So as Tobias is like basically being tortured to death here, he's on death's door, essentially, right? He does get to have this like nice little vision, like you said, these memories of Elfangor. Somehow he first is Elfangor, and then he gets a message from Elfangor that's all like, Tobias, don't die.
What up? It's me, your dad. How you doing?
Ghost Dad. Hashtag I want that book. Andalite Ghost Dad.
Hashtag.
It's just Elfangor like with the opacity turned down, hovering behind Tobias.
No,
Tobias,
people wanted our
that mouse.
People wanted our hashtag for this one. I think it's hashtag Horse Daddy.
So horse, okay.
Because he's an Andalite and they have horse bodies. Do you get it?
Oh no, I got it. I just didn't want to expand further on it.
Oh, because it was just great the way it is. Gotcha.
So let's see here. Plot-wise, rolling right along. Because this is honestly, the way our conversation is going is kind of how I felt reading this point. Because you can only read so long of like just a singular character locked in a box being tortured and just getting random cutaways. But
again, I want to reiterate.
Slow down a little bit in my read.
I want to reiterate that I got something different out of all of these cutaways. I thought they were incredibly interesting individually.
Some of them were good. Some of them were good. There's one that I think really is honestly just long and rambling. And it's the one where he's like thinking that he's multiple different things. And I don't know, it's just like 2.5 whole pages of this trip out. And it didn't really go anywhere. Or I think add much. Anyway, so, nothing's going right for anybody, and they've basically decided that they're just going to murder Tobias because he's not really helping anybody. And then Visser shows up again with this eagle, and he's like, "Hey, we caught one of your buddies." Oh, we should mention earlier that another tactic that the Visser tried was, we found another Andalite. We followed him to his scoop in the woods. Like, we know about him. We did it. And it works on Tobias. It's like psychological torture.
Well, yeah, at first he's like,
his buddies are captured and dead. Well,
yeah, he's like, wait, Axe has a scoop?
Yeah.
It must be real.
There's no way that villain would lie. So he doesn't really know what the situation is on the outside. Yeah, his buddies could be dead, but while they're just kind of in this standoff, like right before they're about to kill him, Axe is spotted by Tobias demorphing from Fleamorph. He's hiding out amongst the group, and he manages to inform Tobias that everybody snuck in on this eagle, which is the injured one that they were actually tending to earlier in the book.
Yeah,
which is like kind of dark. That the team was like, well, they've seen us in Bald Eagle Morph, so we gotta sacrifice this Bald Eagle to the mission.
Well, the Bald Eagle was dying.
Yeah, I know. I think they did say it was doomed, right? Doomed means,
they said
it's an animal that wasn't going to recover. It was highly injured already.
And not only
still,
that,
this Bald Eagle was like a sacrificial Trojan horse for the team because they all rode in on Fleamorph.
It literally was. But the thing that they said earlier that, not earlier, but when it gets killed is, I thought it was very pointedly saying that it was killed like super quickly by the Taxons, like in 4 bites, it was dead. So I think they were trying to make up for the fact that they were killing an eagle by doing that.
No, I'm cool with it. I mean, it's very necessary, I think.
Well, I know you're always down for a good eagle killing, but I'm saying the rest of us.
If only you'd let me continue my thought instead of interrupting. But I know it's super important for you to get those one-liners out, zippity split. I don't screw it. I'm not even going to continue my thought.
No, I want to hear it. No, it's super important to me.
I was just going to say it's important to show, that bad stuff happens to good animals
Eagles.
as well.
I think
I feel like this book series has almost lost its nature conservationist kind of message that they used to push, like back when they were talking to whales. Now they don't do that so much anymore. It's like they've lost the voice of Mother Earth.
Yeah, now they're like throwing.
Now they're murdering bald eagles. They need to do an entire book where they make up for this by like saving all the bald eagles. I think.
Yeah, no. Now
just to bring back the conservation message.
Now I feel like they're gonna break the fourth wall and have Cassie turn to the camera after one of these events and just be like, "I don't give a fuck."
She just shrugs like as a kangaroo is dying or something. Somebody's strangling a kangaroo and Cassie's just shrugging.
Cassie.
Oh, whatever. It's the Australia book. Nobody cares.
No, Cassie's smoking a cigarette and like blowing the smoke into the face of like these bunnies.
Funny because they do mention how they rescued some bunnies and rehabbed them. That's another thing that Tobias mentions, and it's cool that as he's dying, the things that he thinks about to kind of bring him back to some happiness is like his friends, hanging out with them, his memories of Rachel, like sneaking out in the middle of the night, and that scene where they sneak out and fly. If you're just reading the dialogue portions of that and excluding the parts where they're talking about like flying as birds, it could totally be like subcontextually read as a sex scene, I think. Because it starts out with Tobias flying into her room at night and like there's footsteps padding across the room like he's walking to her bed or something. Anyway, that's as far as
her coming to the window. That wasn't that. But I do think
it could be construed either way.
I think it could be construed, as kind of like a teenage male fantasy of just being with a girl late at night, I think.
Well, cool, yeah, and it's freedom. It's like having the freedom to I guess just go out and be with the gal you fancy,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Good old American freedom.
It's what that is.
So everybody's like busting in their battlemorphs now. It goes into the portion of the book that we're all very familiar with, where it's the last battle scene where everybody's struggling to get out of the flim-flam that they're stuck in. And Tobias is just way too injured at this point to even move. I really dug that once he's like broken out of the glass container that he's suspended above the room in for some stupid reason, he has to actually call for help from his teammates, which I think is something we've never seen in this book yet. Unless, maybe Marco earlier was calling for help when he was stuck as a fly, I think. But still, this is like in a dire situation.
Yeah, in a dire situation where he can't even get the thought speak out because he's so weak. Like no one can hear him because he can't project it. We've definitely never seen that before.
Right, yeah, and it's interesting to note that maybe hunger or, near-death weakness limits your thought speak capabilities. That's kind of something we haven't really seen yet. It'd be cool if they laid out and expanded some rules for thought speaking. Always interested in more lore on that. Hashtag ThoughtSpeak lore. Hashtag Morph lore.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I thought this whole thing was interesting. Just having him, even when he's free, everyone else is fighting. Marco is badly damaged, like badly.
Why do they always go to great lengths to be like, yeah, and then Marco got stabbed 1 million times and shot in the head. But,
Yeah,
he powered on.
I think it's because he's the he's the lighthearted one of the group, so showing him hurt is like really hitting home that, yeah, he's making all these jokes because he's dealing with the trauma of almost dying every week.
Yeah, maybe that's why they do it. I don't know. Like I said, in our discussion before we started recording, Marco gets shot on this entire series, and he has every right to be an ass, I think.
I agree with
but the battle sort of comes to a conclusion as, Taylor, who is going insane and just trying to stay alive in this fight, kind of grabs Tobias and sort of runs off with him. And with nobody to really help intervene, Tobias is kind of stuck in her grasp, so to speak.
Yeah, that's definitely
and
true.
She's going to straight up kill him.
Just for really messing with her plans at this point. That's her thought process.
Yeah, and I mean, luckily she didn't get to zap him with both the pain button and the pleasure button at the same time. But Tobias, he's got his freedom. He's eventually saved by Rachel, is all I can say about this. I knew he was going to be saved by somebody, and Rachel is the most fitting one to be able to intervene like this. But what really I didn't expect, I guess, is the fact that, before Rachel can even kill her, Tobias intervenes and says, don't do it. Don't be her, Rachel.
You're not
be
her.
Rachel.
Be Rachel.
Be
Stop
that
being
girl.
someone else.
Be that sweet, sweet girl you once were. I just want to also say, man, they gave Rachel a little bit of development in this, but no mention. They could have thrown in a little dialogue line of her being like, yeah, you remember when I got split in two because I morphed starfish? Remember how dumb that was?
Yeah.
But this they're actively trying to forget about that, I think. No mention of that. They even mention some other things that happened in previous books, I think.
Like what,
I
Mitch?
want to say. Don't quote me on it. We're getting close to the end of this one too here. Because that's the end of that conflict, and they all obviously make it out of there. Like every book, they make it out of there. And then the wrap up chapter is kind of funny. They're like chilling out and flying kites. Axe and Tobias are flying kites after escaping a torture and near death situation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Tobias, of course, has clued everyone in on what happened, and Axe hears about his little vision of Elfangor, and of course this is an Andalite thing, which apparently they have something called an Utsum, where memories are passed down through their DNA, which explains how he had visions of Elfangor, and
which I like this. You're kind of poo-pooing on it, but I thought this was a cool, like, just the fact that it's like some legend that the race has, and this is like Axe is so surprised by it. I just really liked that.
No, it's cool. Other than the fact that it doesn't really make any sense how memories are inherited through DNA, but I don't have any problems with it. What, you saying I got problems with it?
You sound like you got some problems with it.
Other than the fact that almost every Andalite term they come up with, I think, sounds like it should be said with a thick Hebrew accent. The utsum, the chutzum.
Well, I'm okay with that too. So, but no, it's a great little ending.
Tobias and Rachel have a little kissy, and the book wraps up.
Yeah, I mean that's a big deal too. Them kissing, and just really being
I feel like they've been kissing this whole time. We just haven't seen it.
Well, yeah, that's totally possible. But I think it was something else to see it in front of everybody else. It kind of plays off the beginning of the book and how they were distant and not connecting, and this really brought Tobias's humanity and Andalite-anity to his focus and his forefront. He is a sentient creature. He's not a hawk. I think this paid off on a lot of the other Tobias books.
Yeah, it's definitely setting Tobias up for this interesting character because they're making him debate more and more about, choosing between hawk and human, his usefulness to the team, with which way he goes, And I think the most logical thing is that after the war, assuming they're successful, which they don't really think they're going to be, he could just be human then and be with Rachel, assuming both of them are alive, which again, they don't think is going to happen. So there's another side of him that I'm sure is thinking, I should just be human right now before it's all over and I lose the chance forever. And then struggling with the thought of like, well, no, the right thing to do is like fight the war till the bitter end and do everything I can. And I can't do that if I'm running away from it and trying to live out, a normal human life. So yeah, he's very conflicted, and I dig that whole angle. I'd really like to see how the other characters view Tobias after his whole torture thing. And
I'd like to think that a lot will change, but I bet this isn't referenced again until the next Taylor book.
Until she comes back. And I'd like to see Tobias actually act different after this whole thing too. Like, I don't know, maybe he's less inclined to go into tight spaces or something after this, or just something to show that there's some lasting damage mentally from that whole encounter.
I also think that would be cool.
It's the whole book, man. That's the whole story. We went through it.
Yeah. I don't know how you want to do reviews this time. It's up to you whether you want to go first or me. I think people know where I land.
Go for it, brother.
Okay, I'm going to make it short and sweet.
Soar like a red tail.
Yeah. I think this book's incredible. Like, incredible. This is everything I want Animorphs to be. I can't believe I haven't read this before. We write off these ghostwritten books, and half of them I've really, really enjoyed. This one is on another level. This, and I'm going to make a bold statement. I hope people aren't disregarding my opinion too much after the last one, because I really liked the last one. I thought it was really interesting in a lot of ways, and that's why I gave it a 4. I stand by that. This one, though, I mean, this is not us finding a diamond in the rough. This is a actually incredible Animorphs book. An outside perspective from this ghostwriter, I think, really nailed the characters and developed the characters in incredibly important ways. Jake, Rachel, and Tobias are forever changed by this book in the way I see them. And I gotta give the author props for the structure and what we saw and how they took a stupid MacGuffin like the anti-morphing ray and made it important, and you care about what's happening with it and how it's, what happens with it and to relation to Tobias' torture. This book's incredible. This is the boldest statement I could make. I think this is the best Animorph book so far. It is that good in my eyes. I love the David trilogy. That's a whole nother level for me. The first book is incredible. But as far as developing the series and moving forward, I don't know how any of the other ghostwritten books and some of the K. Applegate books could get better than this one. This defines... If I was going to give someone a book that needs to define the Animorphs later on in the war... before they get to the end, I would give them this book in a heartbeat now. This is great. This is just to give one more roll with it. This is the book that could be easily turned into a movie or a TV show after the Animorphs have been introduced, and it would just work from page 1 immediately. Cannot put enough praise on it. If we had a higher rating than 5, I would give it a 6. I'm going to give it a high, incredibly strong 5 Umritsk out of 5.
Oh, okay. There you go. Well, good for you, pal. Glad you got a lot of enjoyment out of this one. And you know what? I got a lot of enjoyment out of it as well. Okay? Despite my thoughts on it. It's just because I've read this a little while ago now. And I've had more time to sit on it and think about it. And I did have a really good time in the beginning. The first act of this book is, like you said, 5 out of 5. Everything we've wanted to see from an Animorphs book. It's just phenomenal. The interactions, the characters, developing. Bravo. I give it up to you. Good job. But, I'll focus a little bit more, I guess, on what lost me from the book, just because you've really hit on all the positives I think we've done a really good job of praising the book throughout. I will say, though, I think the plot slows down a lot once you get to the point where you're confining a single character to one place, one setting, and this whole torture scenario where nothing is really happening other than, pain is being inflicted, and Tobias is, of course, describing that pain in great detail, and we get a lot of interesting insights. However, the type of torture I would call this is non-violent torture, I guess, non-graphic torture. It's like PG torture. It's torture where, you're feeling really bad right now. You definitely are. Although we're not doing anything physical. There's no blood. We're not sticking swords or anything into you here. When I read the descriptions of this book and I hear everybody talk about, it's so dark. Tobias is tortured. It's so dark and nothing's the same from here on out. I was really expecting more from that. And I guess I didn't really expect it to be an in-depth, like them ripping, pieces of his toes or wings off or whatever, which they could have gotten some really gruesome torture out of it. I don't even know why I'm like defending torture here, like I want to see more or something.
Yeah,
you're not where I'm going with this.
Strange.
I'm just saying the book started to slow down, and that's where I lost a little bit of focus and interest here, is where we get kind of generic flashbacks of Tobias's life, instances of him being bullied, which is stuff we knew from previous books. We've been told that he's been bullied in the past. We've probably seen examples of it. So, having these little nondescript moments from his life where he's getting bullied again, it's not necessarily anything new or that we didn't know. And the whole trippy Elfangor memory thing, it was kind of out of left field. But I guess it's pretty cool. It's a way to tie him back to his father and the whole reason that this story started out. So I see why they did it. And, setting up Taylor to be a character that comes back because obviously she gets away is like saying to another ghostwriter, here, you're going to have to deal with this someday.
Yeah.
Basically. So, my feelings are slightly more mixed than yours, I guess. But genuinely, I enjoyed it overall. I don't think it's that super fantastical 5 out of 5 book, but I'm really comfortable giving this thing a 4 out of 5 sacrificial bald eagles.
See, and that seems crazy to me. I just for the characterizations alone, I feel like this deserves higher than that. But I won't shame your score. That's perfectly. I have no problem with this getting a 4 out of 5 and still being positive. I just think this really added another layer to the series and just perfectly inhibited. It perfectly inhibited what I think. It perfectly inhibited what I think the series is in one book. Like the best parts, it hit on all cylinders in my mind for the side stories, for the little aspects, for evolving the mythology, for adding to the series, for changing the characters. It did what we want every book to do, and some of them nailed bits and pieces, but it did all of them. That's why I was so surprised by it.
You know what? It did. It had fantastic character developments all around. Good job there. However, overall, and I'm talking overall grand scheme of things, the war plot not really advancing from this book alone. I don't see a significant change in the overall war effort from this, or the plot series as a. Like I'm saying, this is kind of skippable if you were doing a reread of the series and you wanted the plot only advancing books.
Yeah.
Right there, you could skip this one. So,
yeah,
suck it, Coleman.
I can see that a little bit. I think you're dead wrong, but I can see where you're coming from. But anyway, that's our review of The Illusion.
Yeah, I was going to say, either way, that's 33 The Illusion. Come back next time when we review 34 The Prophecy, another book that I've never read.
Yeah, and actually I haven't heard anything about this one, so I don't know if it's considered good or bad, and maybe we shouldn't even look into it, and just let it hit us.
I'm looking at the cover right now, and it's another one of them freaky ones that I don't think I want to tow around in public.
Oh, yeah? Okay, I haven't seen the front of it, so I don't know. But anyway, well, we appreciate you all listening. Check us out on iTunes if you can hear past my dog. Check us out on iTunes. Leave us a review. Those reviews really help us get out to other people and have new people find the show. And we really appreciate you listening. And join us on Reddit for usually we're in an after show discussion talking about this episode and after we post it and talking about the book. And those are usually pretty insightful. Yeah,
wonderful time on Reddit and discussions and Facebooks and all the places you can get to us. All of the links available on our website, Thoughtspeakcast.com, right?
Mm-hmm. And we thank, and once more we thank the Patreon listeners and those people who've supported us. You can find that on patreon.com/Thoughtspeak. All of that helps grow the show, and like I said, it'll lead to some interesting projects down the line.
Exactamundo. We are super psyched to keep this Animorphs train moving, especially in these books that we've never read before. Although we are getting closer and closer to the ones we really like Visor and such. So, super important that you continue to stick with us, help the show grow, help us continue putting out excellent content. We really appreciate it.
Yep, and I've been your host, Coleman.
And I have been your host, Mitchell.
Have a good one, everybody.